The carriage wheels screamed through fog so thick it felt alive. Evelina Hart pressed trembling fingers to the glass as Ashford Manor erupted from the darkness. Not a house, but a creature of stone and shadow. 7 governesses had fled this place in 18 months. The housekeeper's letter spoke of difficult children. But when the carriage door swung open and Evelina saw him, the Duke, standing motionless in the doorway with a scar splitting his face like a wound that refused to heal, his eyes hollow with something far more dangerous than grief, she understood with bone-deep certainty. This wasn't about unruly children. Something in Ashford Manor wanted her gone. And judging by the way darkness seemed to gather around the Duke like a living thing, she might not survive long enough to discover what. Evelina had arrived expecting broken furniture and tantrums. What she found was silence, the kind that screamed. The manor's doors groaned open, revealing Alexander Blackwell, Duke of Ashford. He didn't move, didn't speak, just studied her with eyes that had forgotten how to hope, while a jagged scar carved through his temple and jaw, a violent souvenir from the same accident that had killed his wife. Behind him, the house breathed. Chandeliers flickered without wind. Portraits watched from walls thick with secrets. And somewhere deep in the corridors, a child's sob echoed and died. Miss Hart. His voice was gravel and smoke. Before you accept this position, you should know, Ashford Manor is not always peaceful. The way he said peaceful made Evelina's skin prickle. This was a warning wrapped in courtesy, a test disguised as employment. Lightning cracked across the moors behind the house, illuminating his face for one electric second. In that flash, Evelina saw it. Not just grief, but guilt, fear, and something darker still. She should have turned back, should have climbed into that carriage and never looked back. Instead, she lifted her chin and stepped across the threshold. The house seemed to sigh, or laugh. Evelina couldn't tell which. The walls of Ashford Manor had eyes. Evelina felt them as Mrs. Dorson, the stone-faced housekeeper, led her through corridors that twisted like a maze designed to disorient. Every portrait seemed to track her movement. Every shadow held breath. The West Wing is forbidden, Mrs. Dorson said without turning. The children's rooms are in the east. Your quarters are beside theirs, for convenience. Or surveillance, Evelina thought. How many staff remain? Fewer each month. Mrs. Dorson's jaw tightened. People don't stay long at Ashford Manor. They hear things. See things. What kind of things? The housekeeper stopped, turning to face Evelina with eyes that held warnings she wouldn't speak aloud. The kind that make good people leave in the middle of the night without collecting their wages. Evelina's room was small but elegant, with a view of gardens strangled by thorns and neglect. A fire crackled in the grate, yet the room felt cold, as if warmth couldn't quite penetrate these stones. She was unpacking when the screaming started. Not terror, rage. Evelina raced downstairs, following the chaos to what had once been a morning room. Now it looked like a battlefield. Sebastian Blackwell, age 10, stood atop an overturned settee wielding a wooden sword, his face flushed with fury. His sister Arabella, 8 years old with wild golden curls, was attempting to tie a footman to a chair with what appeared to be expensive drapery cord. Pirates! Sebastian shouted, spotting Evelina. We're pirates, and you're trespassing. The footman, young, terrified, mouthed a silent plea for help. A shattered Chinese vase lay scattered across marble. The children's clothes were torn. Their eyes burned with something that looked like desperation masquerading as defiance. Evelina took in the scene with the careful assessment of someone who understood that behavior was language. Pirates, she said thoughtfully, stepping into chaos without flinching. Fascinating. I was nearly captured by pirates once. Off the coast of Cornwall. Sebastian's sword lowered half an inch. You were not. I certainly was. Terrible business. They made me walk the plank. Arabella's fingers stilled on the rope. Did you drown? Obviously not, as I'm standing here. Evelina moved closer, her voice dropping to a conspirator's whisper. I made them a bargain. I told them I knew where treasure was hidden, but I'd only reveal it if they made me captain of the ship. And did they? Sebastian's defiance was cracking, curiosity bleeding through. They did. And do you know what I did as captain? Both children shook their heads, transfixed. I steered the ship home, where every pirate received a fair trial and a second chance at an honest life. Evelina's eyes met Sebastian's. Because the greatest treasure isn't gold, young master. It's knowing who you truly are beneath the costume you wear to keep the world away. The silence that followed was profound. Sebastian climbed down slowly. Arabella released the footman, who fled with muttered gratitude. Evelina knelt beside the broken vase. Clearly valuable, clearly beloved. Your mother liked this piece, didn't she? How did you know? Arabella whispered. Because you're standing exactly where you can see it. Even in your wildness, you're protecting her memory. Arabella's face crumpled. Sebastian's jaw clenched, fighting tears. Your mother had exquisite taste, Evelina continued softly. Perhaps we might collect the pieces. See if they can be mended. Some broken things can be made whole again, with patience and care. She looked up at both children, seeing past the pirates to the terrified, grieving souls beneath. Will you really stay? Sebastian asked. The real question beneath. Will you abandon us too? I intend to try, Evelina said honestly. If you'll have me. Later that evening, as Evelina tucked Arabella into bed, the little girl grabbed her hand. The other governesses left because of the noises, Arabella whispered. At night, in the halls, things moving, doors opening. They said the house was haunted. And what do you think? Evelina asked. I think. Arabella's eyes filled with tears. I think Mama's still here. And she's angry we let her die. Evelina's heart cracked. Oh, sweetheart. Your mother's death wasn't your fault. Accidents aren't punishments. Then why does it feel like we're being punished? Before Evelina could answer, a door slammed somewhere in the west wing. Then another. Then another. A cascading sequence of violence echoing through stone. Arabella buried her face in Evelina's shoulder. See? She's angry. But Evelina was listening carefully. Those slams weren't random. They followed a pattern. A rhythm. Someone, something, wanted them afraid. And judging by the cold draft that suddenly filled the room, carrying with it the scent of roses and something darker, it was succeeding. Morning brought no comfort. Evelina descended to breakfast to find the Duke already departed. Estate business, Mrs. Dorson said with a tone suggesting this was perpetual. The children ate in strained silence, jumping at every sound. Your father rises early, Evelina observed, serving herself from the sideboard. Father doesn't sleep, Sebastian said flatly. Not since the accident. Sometimes I hear him walking the halls, Arabella added. At 3 in the morning. 4. 5. Just walking and walking like he's searching for something he lost. Evelina filed this away. Grief manifested in patterns, and the Duke's patterns sounded like penance. Tell me about the accident, she said gently. The children exchanged loaded glances. We're not supposed to talk about it, Sebastian said. Says who? Everyone. He pushed eggs around his plate. Father won't discuss it. The staff changes the subject. Even Aunt Beatrice, Mama's sister in London, she goes silent when we ask questions. What do you remember? Another weighted look passed between siblings. It was raining, Arabella began softly. Mama and Father went riding even though the storm was getting worse. Father said she loved riding in rain, made her feel alive. They were gone for hours, Sebastian continued. When Father came back alone, covered in blood, his face. He touched his own cheek, mirroring where his father's scar lived. He was screaming for help. Said Mama's horse had thrown her. That she'd hit her head on rocks by the river gorge. That it happened so fast. But Evelina heard the unspoken doubt. But Father won't go near the gorge now, Arabella whispered. Not ever. And sometimes, late at night, I hear him crying and saying, I'm sorry, over and over. Guilty conscience. Evelina wondered aloud. That's what the villagers think, Sebastian said bitterly. They whisper that Father killed her. That the accident was really murder. Do you believe that? No. Both children responded in unison, fierce in their loyalty. But something happened that day, Sebastian added. Something Father won't tell us. Something that broke him. Before Evelina could press further, a crash echoed from upstairs. Then a woman's scream, sharp, anguished, cut short. Mrs. Dorson appeared, white-faced. That'll be the maid. Third one this month to quit. What frightened her? Evelina demanded. Same thing that frightens them all. The housekeeper's voice was grim. She saw the Duchess, walking the west wing. In the dress she died in. The summons came at dusk. His Grace required Miss Hart's presence in his study immediately. Evelina found him standing at the window, a silhouette carved from stone and shadow. The study smelled of leather, smoke, and something bitter, grief, perhaps, or regret steeped so long it had become tangible. "You survived 3 days," Alexander said without turning. His voice carried the weight of a man who'd stopped expecting miracles. "Mrs. Dorson tells me the children actually attended lessons today. Willingly. They're bright, curious, starving for structure and attention. They're damaged." He turned then, and the lamplight caught his scar, making it seem fresh. "Raw. I've damaged them." Evelina held his gaze, refusing to flinch from the self-loathing she saw there. "Children aren't vases, Your Grace. They don't shatter from a single drop. They bend, they bruise, they heal, if given the chance." Something flickered in his dark eyes. Surprise, maybe, or the dangerous beginning of hope. The other governesses said similar things. At first, he moved closer, studying her with unnerving intensity. Then the house showed them its teeth. The noises, the visions, the sense of being watched by something that doesn't wish them well. "How long before you flee, Miss Hart?" "I don't frighten easily." "You should." His jaw clenched, a muscle jumping beneath the scar. "This house is wrong. Has been since Catherine died. Since He stopped abruptly, turning away. "Since you what?" "Nothing." The word was a door slamming shut. "Just keep the children away from the West Wing. And the gorge. Never let them near the gorge." Evelina watched him pour brandy with shaking hands. This man wasn't just grieving. He was haunted by something that lived behind his eyes. "What really happened that day, Your Grace?" His hand froze on the decanter. "The inquest ruled it an accident." "That's not what I asked." He drained his glass in one swallow, his back rigid with tension. "You've been here 3 days, and you presume to interrogate me. I presume to understand the family I'm meant to serve. Your children have nightmares about a mother who won't rest. You won't speak her name. And something in this house is actively trying to drive away anyone who might bring light into these shadows." Evelina stepped closer, her voice softening. "What are you protecting them from? Or what are you protecting them from knowing?" Alexander's composure cracked. For one devastating moment, Evelina saw the man beneath the Duke, terrified, guilt-ridden, drowning. "I loved her," he whispered. "Catherine was good and kind, and she deserved better than what His voice broke. "You should leave, Miss Hart. Before this house takes you too. Before you what?" He looked at her then, really looked at her, and the intensity of it stole Evelina's breath. She saw grief there, yes, but also something else. Something that made her pulse quicken and her skin warm despite the cold pressing against the windows. "Before I give you another reason to stay," he said hoarsely, "and doom us both." Thunder cracked outside. The lamps flickered, and from somewhere deep in the West Wing came the sound of a woman weeping, high, anguished, and utterly inhuman. Alexander's face went white. "Get out," he said. "Go to the children. Lock the doors. And for God's sake, Miss Hart, don't trust anything you see in the darkness. Not even me." Evelina woke to silence, the kind that felt wrong. Too thick, too deliberate. The fire had died to embers, casting her room in shadows that seemed to pulse with their own heartbeat. She lay perfectly still, listening to the house breathe around her. Floorboards creaking, wind moaning through cracks in stone. And something else, something closer. Footsteps, slow, deliberate, coming down the corridor toward her door. Evelina's heart hammered against her ribs. She told herself it was a servant. Mrs. Dorson checking the fires. A maid restocking the linen closet. Perfectly reasonable explanations for footsteps at 3 in the morning. Except the footsteps stopped directly outside her door. The handle turned. Evelina sat up, her breath caught in her throat. The brass knob twisted slowly, deliberately, testing, finding resistance. The lock, thank God she'd locked it, held firm. Then came the scratching. Fingernails dragging down wood. Long, slow scrapes that made her teeth ache. Not frantic. Not angry. Just persistent. Patient. As if whatever stood on the other side had all the time in the world. "Who's there?" Evelina's voice came out stronger than she felt. The scratching stopped. Silence pressed against her eardrums like water. Then a voice, soft, feminine, achingly sad, whispered through the keyhole, "He's lying to you." Evelina's blood turned to ice. "Catherine," she breathed. A laugh, low and bitter. "Poor naive girl. You think you can save them? You think love will be enough? It wasn't enough for me. What do you want? I want you to run. Before he destroys you like he destroyed me. Before this house swallows you whole and spits out your bones for the children to find. The handle rattled violently. Once, twice, then stillness. Evelina forced herself out of bed, grabbed the poker from the fireplace, and crossed to the door on trembling legs. She pressed her ear against the wood, listening. Nothing. She waited 5 agonizing minutes before unlocking the door and stepping into the corridor. Empty. Dark. The sconces had gone out. All of them. Leaving only moonlight filtering through distant windows. But there, on her door, were the scratches. Fresh. Deep. For parallel gouges that hadn't been there when she'd retired. Evelina's hand tightened on the poker. She moved down the corridor toward the children's rooms, needing to confirm they were safe. Arabella's door was closed. Sebastian's too. Both locked from the inside, as she'd instructed. Relief flooded through her, until she noticed the door at the corridor's end. The door to the west wing. The forbidden wing. It stood open. Evelina knew she should return to her room. Lock herself in. Wait for daylight. But something drew her forward. Some terrible magnetism she couldn't resist. The west wing smelled of roses and rot. Dust motes danced in moonlight streaming through broken windows. Portrait eyes followed her progress. And at the end of the hallway stood another door. This one ornate, gilded, clearly important. The Duchess's chambers. Evelina's hand was on the handle when a voice behind her, real, male, devastatingly close, said, "I told you not to trust the darkness." She spun to find Alexander emerging from shadow, still dressed, looking as if he hadn't slept in weeks. His eyes were wild, desperate. "It wasn't locked," Evelina said. "The west wing door. Something wanted me here. Or someone." His gaze moved past her to the Duchess's chambers. "Did you go inside?" "Not yet." "Don't." He grabbed her arm, his grip almost painful. "Whatever you think you'll find in there, whatever answers you're seeking, they'll only give you nightmares." "I already have nightmares, Your Grace. Something tried to enter my room tonight. It spoke to me, warned me about you." Alexander's face went ashen. "What did it say?" "That you're lying. That you destroyed Catherine. That this house will destroy me too." Evelina pulled free, meeting his haunted gaze. "Are you lying to me?" Thunder rumbled. The corridor seemed to contract. "Yes," Alexander whispered. "God help me, yes." "Before we uncover what Evelina finds in that forbidden room, can I ask a tiny favor? If this story is keeping you awake at night, in the best way, hit that like button. Subscribe so you don't miss what happens when the truth finally crawls out of the shadows. And drop a comment telling me, do you think Alexander killed his wife? Or is something darker happening at Ashford Manor? Your theories fuel these midnight tales. Now let's step inside that room together. Alexander's confession hung in the air like poison. "You're lying about what?" Evelina demanded, but he was already retreating, his face a mask of anguish. "Ask me in daylight, when the house isn't listening." He disappeared into shadow, leaving her alone before the Duchess's door. Evelina should have followed him. Should have returned to safety. Instead, she turned the handle and stepped inside. The room was a shrine, untouched, preserved exactly as Catherine had left it 2 years ago. Dresses still hanging in the wardrobe, perfume bottles arranged on the vanity. A book splayed open on the bedside table, its pages yellowed with waiting. But it was the portrait above the mantel that arrested Evelina's attention. Catherine Blackwell had been beautiful. Golden-haired, blue-eyed, with a serene smile that belonged to someone who'd never known fear. Yet the artist had captured something else. A tension around her eyes. A tightness in her jaw. The smile of a woman performing happiness rather than feeling it. Evelina moved closer, studying the painting's details. Catherine wore sapphires at her throat. Her hand rested on an escritoire in the background, the very same desk that sat beneath the window. The desk drawers were locked. Evelina searched the room methodically. She found the key tucked inside a jewel box, hidden beneath strands of pearls. Her hand shook as she unlocked the bottom drawer. Inside lay a journal, leather-bound, well-worn, the pages filled with Catherine's delicate script. Evelina carried it to the window where moonlight could illuminate the words. She opened to a random page, dated 6 months before Catherine's death. "He watches me. I feel his eyes even when I'm alone. Alexander says I'm imagining things. That grief over losing the baby has made me see shadows where there are none. But I'm not mad. Someone in this house wishes me harm. I can feel it like ice against my spine." Evelina's breath caught. She flipped backward through entries. The West Wing door was open again this morning. I locked it myself last night. Someone has a key. Someone comes and goes while we sleep. Earlier still, I found her portrait turned to face the wall. My great-grandmother Isabel, the one who died under mysterious circumstances, the one no one speaks of. Why would someone do that? What are they trying to tell me? The earliest entry that mentioned fear. Theo brought me flowers today. White roses. The same flowers that were placed on Isabel's grave the morning they found her at the bottom of the gorge. When I asked him about the symbolism, his smile didn't reach his eyes. Just flowers, Your Grace, he said. But I saw something in his expression. Something hungry. Something patient. I told Alexander my concerns. He laughed and said Theo has served this family for 20 years. That I'm being paranoid. But Alexander doesn't see what I see. He doesn't notice how Theo watches me. Waits. As if he's counting down to something inevitable. Evelina's mind raced. Theo Whitlock, the estate manager. The man who'd greeted her carriage with cold courtesy and colder eyes. She was about to read more when she heard it. A floorboard creaking. Not in the corridor. Inside the room. Evelina spun around. Empty. But the creak came again, from near the wardrobe. She approached slowly, her heart hammering. Pressed her hand against the wall panel beside the wardrobe. It gave way. A hidden door swung open, revealing a narrow passageway thick with dust and darkness. And there, just inside the entrance, was a bundle wrapped in cloth. Evelina unwrapped it with trembling fingers. A riding crop, snapped in half. The leather stained dark with something that looked horribly like dried blood. And beneath it, a note in Catherine's handwriting, hastily scrawled. If you're reading this, I'm already dead. Don't trust. The rest was torn away. Behind Evelina, a voice, cold, measured, terrifyingly calm, said, You shouldn't have come here, Miss Hart. Now I'll have to do to you what I did to her. She turned to find Theo Whitlock standing in the doorway, blocking her only escape. And he was smiling. Evelina's hand tightened on the blood-stained riding crop. Stay back. Theo's smile widened. Or what? You'll strike me like Catherine tried to strike me that day at the gorge? She fought hard, I'll give her that. But gravity always wins in the end. You murdered her. I freed her. He stepped closer, his eyes glittering with something that looked like devotion twisted into madness. She was wasted on him. The Duke never appreciated what he had. But I saw her, truly saw her. And when she rejected me, when she threatened to expose my feelings to Alexander, well, he shrugged. Some love stories end in tragedy. Evelina calculated the distance to the door. Too far. He'd catch her before she reached the corridor. The hauntings, she said, stalling. The voices. That was you. A combination of architecture and theater. These old houses have secrets. Hidden passages, acoustic tricks. I've had 2 years to perfect my performance. 7 governesses ran screaming. But you. His expression darkened. You're stubborn. Inconvenient. Just like Catherine. He lunged. Evelina swung the riding crop. It connected with his temple, and he stumbled, cursing. She bolted for the door. The journal clutched to her chest. The corridor was no longer empty. Dr. Oliver Grant stood there, his medical bag in hand, his kind face creased with concern. Miss Hart. I heard shouting. Are you hurt? He killed her. Evelina gasped. Theo killed the Duchess. Oliver's eyes widened. He looked past her to where Theo emerged from the chamber, blood trickling down his face. Theo, is this true? She's hysterical, Theo snarled. Found some old journal and conjured fantasies. The journal proves everything. Evelina interrupted. Catherine knew. She wrote about his obsession, his threats. Let me see it. Oliver extended his hand, his physician's calm unshakable. But as Evelina handed him the journal, she caught something in his expression. A flicker of recognition. Of guilt. You knew, she breathed. You knew and said nothing. Oliver's face crumpled. Catherine came to me 3 weeks before she died. Said someone was poisoning her, small doses, making her dizzy during rides. I examined her and found traces of foxglove in her system. But when I confronted Theo, he said he'd tell Alexander about my gambling debts, about the money I'd stolen from the estate medical fund. I was a coward, Miss Hart. God forgive me, I chose silence. Touching confession, a new voice cut through the darkness. Eliza Thornton emerged from the shadows, Alexander's distant cousin, her beautiful face cold with calculation. But entirely unnecessary. We all have secrets, Dr. Grant. The question is, what's Miss Hart willing to do to keep hers? Evelina's blood ran cold. What are you talking about? Did you really think no one would investigate you? Eliza's smile was serpentine. The governess who appears from nowhere with impeccable references? I know what you're running from. The scandal in Bath. The married man. The accusations. That's a lie. Is it? Or shall I inform the Duke that his children's governess has a rather colorful past? Eliza's eyes glittered. Here's what's going to happen. You'll return to your room. You'll forget everything you've seen tonight. And tomorrow, you'll quietly resign and disappear. Otherwise, I'll destroy whatever reputation you have left. Why? Evelina demanded. Why protect him? Because Theo has been useful to me. And because Alexander doesn't deserve happiness after rejecting my suit 3 times. Eliza's mask slipped, revealing venom beneath beauty. If I can't have him, no one will. The corridor suddenly blazed with light. Alexander stood at the far end, a candelabra in hand, his face terrible in its fury. Enough, he said quietly. All of you, out of my house. Now. The candelabra's flame cast Alexander's face in savage relief, half light, half shadow, entirely unforgiving. But Evelina saw past his fury to something that made her chest tighten, devastation. He'd heard everything, every poisonous confession. Your Grace, Theo began. Don't. Alexander's voice could have cut stone. 2 years. 2 years I believed it was my fault, that I'd failed to protect her, that the accident happened because I wasn't vigilant enough. His hand trembled on the candelabra. And all along, you murdered her, poisoned her, weakened her before that final ride so she'd fall. She was going to ruin everything. Theo's composure finally shattered. I loved this estate. Served your family for 20 years. Catherine discovered I'd been altering the account books, small amounts at first, then more. She threatened to expose me, destroy my reputation. I had no choice. You had every choice. Alexander moved closer, and Evelina saw the Duke transform into something far more dangerous. The poisoning, the hauntings, driving away the governesses. Why? To keep the children isolated, vulnerable, to keep them from healing. Eliza's voice was ice. As long as Sebastian and Arabella remained wild, grief-stricken, the household stayed in chaos. Which meant Alexander stayed broken, guilty, alone. She turned to Alexander with naked bitterness. I waited. 3 proposals rejected. But I thought eventually you'd see reason, see that I could replace Catherine. Give your children a proper mother. So you helped Theo terrorize my children. Alexander's words fell like gravestones. Helped him frighten away anyone who might bring light back into this house. I loved you. Eliza's mask cracked completely. But you looked through me. Even grieving, even destroyed, you looked through me like I was glass. Evelina stepped forward, the journal pressed to her chest like armor. Catherine knew. Her entries mentioned both of you. Theo's obsession. Eliza's jealousy. She was gathering evidence before she died. She looked at Alexander. The note in the hidden passage, she was writing it for you. A warning she never finished. Something broke in Alexander's expression. He turned to Dr. Grant, who stood pale and trembling against the wall. And you? What's your sin in this, Oliver? Cowardice. The doctor's voice was ash. Just cowardice. I knew about the foxglove. Did nothing. Let her die because I was too afraid of losing everything. You already have. Alexander's voice was quiet now, terrible in its certainty. Constable Morrison will be summoned at first light. All of you will face justice. Theo for murder, Eliza for conspiracy, Oliver for negligent complicity. He looked at each of them in turn. Get out of my sight. Mrs. Dorson will lock you in separate guest chambers until the authorities arrive. As footmen appeared to escort the 3 away, Theo lunged toward Evelina with sudden violence. This is your fault. Another meddling woman who couldn't leave well enough alone. But Alexander was faster. His fist connected with Theo's jaw with a crack that echoed through stone. The estate manager crumpled. Touch her, Alexander said softly, standing over Theo's unconscious form. And murder won't be what you're arrested for. It will be what I'm arrested for. The house fell silent after the constables came. After Theo, Eliza, and Oliver were led away in chains while dawn broke cold and merciless over Ashford Manor. After the children were told a carefully edited version of the truth, that the people who hurt their mother would face justice, that the hauntings were tricks, that they were finally safe. Evelina found Alexander in his study as afternoon light bled through windows, turning dust motes to gold. He stood at the fireplace, one hand braced against the mantel, his shoulders carrying weight that should have broken him months ago. "You should rest," she said softly. "I can't." His voice was scraped raw. "Every time I close my eyes, I see her. Catherine, trusting me to keep her safe, while poison ate away at her strength. While that monster walked our halls, and I saw nothing. Suspected nothing." Evelina moved closer. "You couldn't have known." "I should have." He turned, and the anguish in his face was unbearable. "She tried to tell me. Said she felt watched, threatened. I dismissed it as nerves. Postnatal melancholy after losing the baby. I was so bloody arrogant, so certain I knew better." His hand rose to his scar. This isn't from the accident. I gave it to myself. After they buried Catherine, took a knife and carved a reminder into my own flesh so I'd never forget what my blindness cost. Alexander. His name escaped her lips, unbidden, intimate. That's not penance. That's self-destruction. Perhaps I deserve both. But he was looking at her now with an intensity that made her breath catch. "For 2 years I've been a ghost in my own house. Dead in every way that matters. Then you arrived with your steady eyes and your refusal to be frightened and your impossible kindness to my damaged children." He stepped closer. "You made me remember what it felt like to be alive. And it terrified me. Why? Because everyone I love suffers. Catherine, the baby we lost. Sebastian and Arabella are trapped in grief. I thought if I kept my distance from you, if I remained cold and untouchable, I could protect you from whatever curse follows me." His jaw clenched. "But you wouldn't stay distant, would you? You walked into danger, solved a murder, saved my children from a poisoner's legacy." His voice dropped to something raw and reverent. "You saved me, Evelina. From guilt, from darkness, from myself." The space between them evaporated. His hand rose to cup her face with devastating gentleness. "I have nothing to offer you but a haunted house and a broken man and 2 children who need you more than air. But if you'll have us, if you can forgive what loving me might cost." Evelina pressed her fingers to his lips. "The only cost I fear is leaving. Wondering what might have been if I'd been brave enough to stay." "Then stay." His forehead touched hers. "God help me. Stay." When he kissed her, it tasted like redemption. Like coming home after years of wandering. The fire crackled. The house seemed to exhale. And somewhere in the east wing, 2 children who'd forgotten how to hope began to dream of tomorrow. 3 months passed before the final shadow lifted from Ashford Manor. The trial was swift. Theo Whitlock hanged for murder. Eliza Thornton sentenced to 10 years for conspiracy. Dr. Oliver Grant stripped of his medical license, imprisoned for complicity. The village whispered for weeks, then months. Then finally moved on to fresher scandals. But the house remembered. Evelina woke one April night to Sebastian screaming. She raced to his room to find him thrashing in sheets, sobbing words that chilled her blood. "It's not over. She's still here. Mama's still trapped." Alexander arrived seconds later, gathering his son against his chest. "It was just a nightmare." "No." Arabella appeared in the doorway, her face pale in candlelight. "Sebastian's right. I feel it too. Like Mama's trying to tell us something. Like she can't rest until we understand." Evelina exchanged glances with Alexander. They'd restored order to the household, hired new staff, begun renovations. The children were healing, laughing again, playing again. But something remained unfinished. "The gorge," Evelina said quietly. "We've never been to the place where she died." Alexander's face went rigid. "No, I can't. You must." Evelina took his hand. "We all must. Together. To say goodbye properly. To release her." Dawn found them at the river gorge, mist rising from water that ran cold and clear over ancient stones. The place where Catherine fell, where Theo pushed her, where Alexander's guilt was born. Sebastian clutched his father's hand. Arabella held Evelina's. And Alexander finally spoke the words he'd carried for 2 years like stones in his chest. "I'm sorry I didn't believe you. Sorry I didn't see the danger. Sorry I failed you when you needed me most." His voice broke. "But I promise you, our children are safe now. Loved. Protected. You can rest, Catherine. You can finally rest." Arabella stepped forward and placed white roses on the rocks. "Thank you for being our mama. We'll always remember you. But we're going to be happy now. Is that okay?" The wind shifted, carried the scent of roses and something sweeter, jasmine, Catherine's favorite. And in that moment, The oppressive weight that had pressed against Ashford Manor for 2 years simply lifted. Like breath released. Like a soul finally free. Sebastian looked up at his father with wonder. She's gone. Really gone. She's not sad anymore. Alexander pulled both children close, his eyes finding Evelina's over their heads. In that gaze she saw everything. Gratitude, love, and the promise of a future no longer haunted by the past. That evening, as Evelina tucked Arabella into bed, the little girl smiled. Will you marry Papa? Would you like that? Yes. Then you'd really be ours forever. Arabella's eyes were already closing. And maybe we could have a baby brother or sister. One who lives this time. Evelina's heart swelled. Maybe we could. She found Alexander waiting in the corridor, clearly having overheard. He pulled her close, pressing a kiss to her temple. Is it too soon to ask? Ask me anyway. Marry me. Not because the children need you, or because the house needs light, or because I need saving. His thumb traced her cheekbone. Marry me because I love you. Because you walked into darkness without flinching. Because you taught me that broken things can heal if given patience and care. Yes. She kissed him softly. Yes to all of it. The haunted house. The healing children. The scarred Duke who finally learned that love isn't a curse. It's the only magic strong enough to break one. Outside, rain began to fall. Gentle. Cleansing. Washing away the last traces of grief that had stained these stones for far too long. Ashford Manor had been a tomb. Now would be a home. The curse was finally, completely, broken. Every love story has secrets buried in its foundation. Every house holds memories that refuse to stay silent. And sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is walk through the door everyone else fled from and refuse to leave until you've brought light into every shadowed corner. If you're still here, still breathing in this story's afterglow, then you understand what it means to believe in second chances. In healing. In love that's strong enough to survive ghosts. But here's the truth I need you to know. Creators live and die by your engagement. That like button? It tells the algorithm that stories like this, gothic, romantic, unafraid of darkness, deserve to be seen. That subscribe button? It's a promise between us that you'll be there when the next tale unfolds. And comments? They're oxygen. They're proof that words still matter. That love stories can still make your heart race at 3 in the morning. So if this story gave you anything, a shiver, a sigh, a moment where you forgot the real world existed, give something back. Hit like. Subscribe. Tell me in the comments which moment destroyed you most. Was it Alexander's confession? The children's goodbye at the gorge? That final kiss in the corridor? Your voice matters. Your engagement keeps these midnight tales alive. Thank you for staying until the end. For believing in haunted houses and second chances, and Governess is brave enough to tame not just wild children, but wounded dukes with scars that run deeper than skin. Until the next story finds us in the darkness, stay curious, stay romantic, and never be afraid to walk through the door everyone else is running from.